It has been a tough first 50 days for President Obama as the economy has gone from bad to worse. CBS News senior White House correspondent Bill Plante joins us now with more. Good morning, Bill.
Good morning, Harry. So far, that $787 billion stimulus, part of the swift action the president called for 50 days ago, hasn't gotten the economy moving again.
Today, I say to you that the challenges we face are real. They are serious and they are many.
But since that Inauguration Day reminder, the economic downturn has only grown worse. On January 20th, the stock market closed just below 8,000. It opens this morning at just above 6,500. The unemployment rate in January was 7.2%. It's since jumped to 8.1% and seems likely to go higher. Housing prices have continued to nosedive as foreclosure rates skyrocket. And the administration has had to put billions more into propping up financial giants Citigroup and AIG. J.D. Foster, an economist from the conservative Heritage Institute, says the president's policies haven't helped.
You can't lay all the blame for the stock market at the president's feet, but he certainly can't be said to have instilled any confidence in the markets.
President Obama has tried to pump up the economy and restore confidence in banks. There's $300+ billion set aside in Part 2 of the bank bailout program, as well as his housing and stimulus packages. But Barry Bosworth of the Brookings Institute is among many liberal-leaning economists who believe more needs to be done.
People have no confidence that we have restored the financial soundness of the system at the present time.
Many of the administration's supporters believe that it will take still more taxpayer dollars. Meanwhile, the president turns his attention today to education. He will propose higher education standards, but he has no specific set of standards and no legislation in the pipeline. Harry?
Bill Plante this morning at the White House. Thanks. Joining us for an economic roundtable, Steve Forbes, president and CEO of Forbes, Chrystia Freeland, U.S. managing editor of the Financial Times, and Peter Morici, economist and business professor at the University of Maryland. So great to have you all in the studio. 50 days isn't even a time for a midterm grade, but if you're going to grade the president on the economic policies thus far, Steve Forbes, what kind of grade would you give him?
If I was charitable, incomplete, but in terms of a grade,
Right.
So far, not passing. The
Not
reason
passing.
is he's done nothing effective to deal with the financial collapse.
Chrystia?
Well, I would agree with Mr. Forbes. I think that the financial crisis is the core problem right now, and I think that's the one area where we haven't seen sufficiently bold action from the government.
Because one of the fellows in Bill's piece said not enough is being done. Others would argue too much is being done. Where's the Goldilocks?
On the financial part of the crisis, I think very few people would argue that not enough has been done. But where I would probably be a little bit more positive than Mr. Forbes is I do think the stimulus package was actually really huge. And some people
In a positive way.
In a positive way. Some people argue it wasn't quite enough, but that was a big thing to get through really quickly and essential, I think.
Professor?
Well, it's C- simply because I don't want him to leave the program. The stimulus package will create a couple of million jobs, but it is terribly expensive for the impact that it will have. There's just too much stuff like the National Endowment for the Arts and doubling the size of the Department of Education. He's going to come up short on this notion of 90% private sector jobs. That's a wish. On the financial bailout plan or the stabilization plan, let's face it, Mr. Geithner was part of the last administration, president of the New York Fed, architect of the Citigroup bailout. He shows up in town with a terribly vague plan that, frankly, if a graduate student handed it in, I would tell him to leave the program. I'd tell him to go register at the Baltimore Academy for Pastry Chefs.
Let me ask, do you have any optimism going forward that this is going to sort of sort itself out, or is there some need of bolder, more different action? If you had one thing you wanted to change about, if you could go in and walk into the cabinet meeting this morning and say, Mr. President, change this, what would you tell him to change?
Three quick things. One, get rid of mark-to-market, which is destroying banks and insurance companies. If he doesn't do that, this economy is not going to recover. Number two, put in road bumps on short selling like the uptick rule. Number three, tell Mr. Bernanke at the Federal Reserve, get on the job and start pumping real money into mortgage-backed securities.
Because we have this sense that there's this giant fire hose shooting trillions of dollars into the economy. Is it really happening or not?
Since December, the Federal Reserve has tightened up. It's withdrawn $400 billion from the financial system. It is bizarre.
If you could go into the cabinet meeting this morning and tap someone on the shoulder, say, leave or stay, or say, what would your piece of advice be?
I would say, President Obama, please use your bully pulpit and your very effective communication skills to get a lot more money from Congress for the banks, maybe as much as $1 trillion, and use that money once and for all to clean them up.
Okay.
No zombie banks, no Japan.
No zombie banks, no Japan. But here's this whole thing. There's this kind of growing outcry of enough with the too big to fail already. Just fail. Clean up the mess afterwards. Any wisdom in that?
Yes, create a bad bank, sweep all the questionable assets off their books. That's how I'd use your $1 trillion.
But that's going to cost a lot of money, right?
Right. However, then what you do is at that point, Citigroup looks desirable. It's got 8% of the deposits, got lots of branches with shiny offices. Fine, you can sell new stock in the banks. That way the shareholders aren't rewarded for what's happened.
Right.
They get recapitalized. They can pay back their TARP money, and we get new management
Is this
to go
a kind
forward.
of nationalization?
No.
No.
What I'm talking about is reprivatizing them.
Right.
Basically, you take the bad assets off their books. It's what we do with small banks when we close them out. But because you can't merge Citigroup into a bigger bank, you let it sell new shares.
Right.
And you change the management.
Okay, what about the housing crisis? About billions have been poured in. That's going to help, it sounded where to 7 to 9 or so million householders. Is it a good idea, bad idea, or should they be left to fail too?
Well, first of all, take care of the 92% who are trying to make their monthly payments, and that is have the Federal Reserve go to banks and say, if you write mortgages at fixed rates of 4.5%, we'll buy those mortgages and mortgage-backed securities. You start get refinancing like that, you got the housing market moving again, people's monthly payments go down, economy starts to show signs of life.
All right, I was on the internet all morning this morning trying to find the one green blade of grass, and there's a Reuters survey this morning that says a survey of private economists believe the economy is actually going to improve by the third quarter. Do you believe it? Yes or no?
No.
Yes or no?
No.
Yes or no?
Yes, if they get rid of mark-to-market, even sooner.
Thank you all so much
Thank
for
you.
being with us this morning. All right, come back in 50 more days. We'll see how it goes.